showed a small decline in this reporting period, but I'd like to see figures over 2 or 3 years to establish if that's a trend we can rely on or not. And again, we'll report on that going forward. The other point I wanted to bring members' attention to was in relation to self-assessment of our work in AVAP. I see that it's mentioned there that work was to begin in springtime this year of undertaking that self-assessment. I can advise members that that work has started. There's been a couple of meetings to move that forward, and again that will be reported on as we progress. And it's important to do that self-assessment to give us a baseline of where we are and a benchmark also to see where we can improve and develop our services in relation to gender-based violence. I would say my assessment of the work of the partnership, it's going very well. We've still got some way to go in relation to eradicating gender-based violence. These are often very challenging and complex cases and circumstances, but when I hear firsthand from the agencies about how they are reacting and responding to women and children who are coming forward, I'm very inspired by their work and their dedication and commitment to address these issues, and I would like to reassure members that that is indeed the case. To conclude, going forward, I have no doubt, and the partnership has no doubt, that prevention and education is absolutely the way forward. We can react to situations, and we will do, and agencies do so, but if we're going to have an impact on the number of cases going forward, then we need to focus on prevention and education. And lastly, on page 33 of the report, you will see that the key priorities for 23-24 were listed there. I can update members that the vast majority of all of those priorities have been addressed in the last year and are ongoing work. And so we identified those points as absolutely vital to maintain our work. And I'm pleased to report that all of that work is ongoing, and we'll report further on it in the next year. So I feel that we're in a positive place. There is clearly still work to be done, but all the agencies across Angus work very hard, are very well coordinated, and looking forward, we're going to link in more with adult protection and child protection to improve how we respond to gender-based violence in Angus. So I'd probably leave it at that, Provost, if that's okay with yourself, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. West. Now, as this has been considered at scrutiny and audit already, and as per previous council meetings, I request new questions from members who are not on scrutiny and audit, and I see Councillor Bell's hands up first. Councillor Devine, I see hers up. Any further hands at the present time? No, right, I'll ask Councillor Bell for her question. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I am in scrutiny and audit, but it's a new question, promise. Okay. Thank you, Ewan. You know I value the work of the partnership. I just wanted to pick out on page 30 under the employer's pledge. We're struggling to engage with employers across Angus, and I've been invited to launch this at 2 events that have both had to be postponed due to lack of uptake. The second one would have been next week. So I am quite concerned about that, particularly as it's a really good way potentially to reach a large male workforce. I wondered, first of all, what is the partnership doing to address that? Secondly, what are the barriers in place, do you think? And third, is there anything I can do to help? Thanks.
Mr West.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bell. Likewise, I'm very disappointed that there's been, despite contact with various employers across Angus, the response has been very, very poor to participate in this employer's pledge, because I agree it's a great way, or potentially a great way, of interacting with many people. We discussed it at the most recent meeting, and we think, well, we obviously need to address this in a different way. We've not got an answer to that yet, but it's not something that's going to disappear off the radar, because it's something we absolutely need to do. We've tried, and so far, just to go direct contact, but we'll probably need to have a better way of engaging with employers, and there's some ideas being floated, but nothing finalised yet. So yes, disappointing, but we need to remain at this and get employers to the table to sign on the pledge. Sorry, I missed point 3 of your question, Councillor.
Just if there was anything I could do to help, I could be happy to do anything to contribute to that.
Yes, no, well, I think that offer might be taken up, Councillor, and if you can have a couple of weeks till we come up with another way forward, we would be happy to engage your assistance. That would be great, and indeed any other councillor who may be able to help us. Thank you.
I think that was more of a comment than a question, but move on to Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. Thank you very much for this report. And yes, I was on scrutiny and audit as well, but I don't think I asked this question, this scrutiny and audit, but I think I might have asked it before. It's about the White Ribbon campaign, and it's a bit similar to Councillor Bell's point. I was just wondering if you have any figures for the number of organisations that have pledged to this, because I do see it, as one of the important preventative measures as well. And again, I know I've given quite a few ideas to the people involved with the White Ribbon campaign as to the football clubs, rugby clubs, things like that could be asked about or approached. So I'm happy also to help if I can on this one too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, now we discussed this also at our most recent meeting, perhaps that we needed to freshen this up a bit. It's kind of been running the same way for the last number of years. And yes, we have embarked, we engage in some of the sporting clubs across Angus, but we need to develop it more. And so that's an outstanding action for the committee for the next, when we meet next, is to come forward with ideas as to how we can refresh that, because yeah, the message is out there and a number of people have pledged, and I will get you the number of organisations. I'll find out if I can get it to you, do more. So I will come back to you on that one, Councillor.
Thank you very much for that, Mr West. Any further questions? Who is at home? No, right, okay, we'll move on to comments then. I saw Councillor Whiteside's hand first, and then Councillor Brays. Right, we'll start with comments. Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Mr West, for your introduction there and for the report. There's all information in there, and I'm particularly encouraged to see the work that's going on in schools, because I think it's really important to capture people at that age and set the scene for their life ahead. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brays.
Yes, I would like to echo Councillor Whiteside's comments there regarding the good work of this partnership, and thank Mr West for all his efforts. My comment is that, yet again, and I've said this so many times, men they have to be part of the solution. And I would invite all men sitting in this chamber and all those attending remotely to think about just how much they've done in the last year to help solve this problem. I'm giving that a bit of thought, and I've not done nearly enough, and I'll have to try and do a bit better next year. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braze.
Thanks, Provost. I just wanted to say how pleased I was to be able to attend the launch in Montrose Football Club of the Bring Girls. The young women gave a tremendous presentation, and they answered questions so competently and with a great deal of humour. So it was also a privilege to have them at our Family Education and Justice Committee, and then Councillor Bell had them along at the International Women's Day event, putting their message out there. But I just wish them all the best, and the Education Committee did so as well.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Devine. I see no other hands, so it looks like it's last say to the Deputy Provost. So over to Deputy Provost.
Once again, getting my Sunday name, UNF can call you that. An amazing report. I would just like to say that I'm old enough to realise that this is an age-old problem. And what really stands out for me in this great report, really, I wish we didn't have to have a report like this, but the very fact that you mention various times of almost not quite a peer education, but certainly a peer group sharing, which is always for me a good thing, because any time that you can get people who have got life-lived experiences being able to help, in this case, their sisters, but also their brothers. So, more power to your elbow.
Thank you very much. So we have in front of us, of which we are supposed to review number 1 and note number 2. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Moving on to number 5, the appointment of the Deputy Chief Social Worker. I determine in terms of Standing Order 2512, there has been a material change of circumstances within 6 months of consideration of Report 3523, presented to Council 14th of December 2023. As a result of the appointment of the Deputy CSWO to the post of Interim Director of Children, Families and Justice CSWO, and it's appropriate for the scheme of delegations to be reconsidered only insofar as it relates to the appointment of a Deputy CSWO in terms of recommendations 2 and 3 contained in report number 101/24. I think Kirsty Lee may wish to introduce this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this report seeks approval for the Chief Social Work Officer to appoint a suitably qualified deputy to cover during holiday periods. The current arrangement sees the deputy role tied to a post which is vacant. So the new arrangement will support more robust cover for the statutory role of the Chief Social Work Officer. This, however, requires an amendment to the scheme of delegation, and therefore we seek approval for that today.
Does anyone have any questions? Comments? Right. Well, we have the recommendations in front of us. 1 is to note, 3 is to agree. Is that all? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 6. Treasury Management Strategy Statement 2024. And Ian Lorimer may wish to introduce.
Thank you, Provost. Good afternoon, everyone. Yep, it's that time of year where we need to agree a Treasury strategy for the forthcoming financial year, and that needs to be signed off by full Council, albeit that this report will also go to scrutiny and audit for review as well. Treasury is one of those pretty technical areas, but essentially what we're trying to do is manage cash, time the borrowing of any borrowing we need to do, to get the best interest rates and to generate income on our surplus cash balances. So that's really what the strategy before Council today is seeking to do. Now, central to that whole strategy is having a view on interest rate and where you think interest rates will go to. So generally, if you think rates are going to fall, delay your borrowing. That is what we're currently doing. And that also has an impact in terms of the timing of our placement of surplus cash to generate a return. The strategy for next year, as is proposed in this report, is very much in line with the strategy that we've pursued in the current financial year. So we're essentially delaying the timing of taking new borrowing until we see interest rates begin to fall. And, they haven't changed today in terms of base rates, but there is an expectation that rates will begin to fall as we move through this financial year and into future financial years. So we're continuing to defer new borrowing for the meantime, and we're not proposing any changes in terms of how we manage our investments and the limits, etc., that apply to that. So that is essentially the strategy, Provost. But again, happy to take any questions members might have on it.
Is there any questions? I see Councillor Dornan. I'm seeing it now in front of me. But I could see that Councillor Devine had her hand up too, but I couldn't see who had put their hand up first. So, Councillor Dornan, Councillor, any further? No, right. We'll start with Councillor Dornan.
Okay, thank you. My question relates to Table 1, which is on 68 of the combined papers, and it just related to the this position of not borrowing and sort of taking more debt into the future. And I just wondered if there's any kind of estimate of level of risk that leaves the council in, as a note that as we move to 27, the estimate is a total external debt of 220 million versus debt of 130 million for 23-24. And I just wondered if there was any context around risk in doing that, and if there's obviously more debt that needs to be taken out due to things that might happen in the next few years, where that might leave the council. Thanks.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Dornan. Yeah, a good question. Everything that we do in Treasury management terms is about risk and about how we manage that risk. You're right to point out that we do have a significant amount of new borrowing to do. Now, we could go out and borrow that money tomorrow if we needed to. If we absolutely needed to, we could do that. We need to do that because our cash balances currently are still pretty strong. They're not as high as they have been. Within that just the previous page, we refer to the fact that our cash balance at the end of March 23 was just under 88 million, and we expect that to be a reduction to around 55 million by the end of this financial year. But that's a deliberate and planned approach to how we're managing our cash. So we still have plenty cash to meet our obligations. We do have significant capital projects at the moment, including the Moneyfeith High School. Obviously, there's significant expenditure being incurred in relation to that. So we could borrow if we needed to at any time, and if we felt that was the appropriate thing to do, then that's what we would do. But we're not under any pressure to do that at the moment. And the plan is to borrow the new borrow take later in this financial year and into the two following financial years as we expect rates to fall. If rates didn't fall or didn't fall as fast as we would hope, we would probably still then need to borrow. But at this point in time, we can work on that basis because we have the cash balances to do that. So it's really just about how we manage that risk and the timing of that new borrowing. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dornan. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Provost. Don't often ask questions on Treasury management, Ian, but just felt on page 71, 5.2, policy on borrowing in advance of need. And the second sentence there is just that wee bit woolly, I think. Borrowing in advance for other purposes may, however, be appropriate in certain circumstances. And I wondered what other purposes you might think necessary. And do you have any examples of possible circumstances that it might be advantageous to borrow in?
Thanks, Councillor Devine. Yeah, another good question. It's not something that we have done. I'm probably struggling to think of many circumstances where we would do that. But we could have a situation, for example, we've got a project that is we intend to make a commercial return on it. So it could perhaps be a Tay-Cities project or something like that, where the timing of the borrowing and the timing of the investment and then the return could mean borrowing some of that money in advance. Would absolutely need to spend it. So there may be a circumstance such as that, but it would be pretty unusual that we would do that. The point of that paragraph in that policy is we're not allowed to borrow. So we could go out and borrow tomorrow at say 4%, and then we could invest that at 5%. We're not allowed to do that purely to make a return. So that's what that policy is about. But if it was something legitimate where we needed to borrow in order to fund a capital project, an investment project or whatever, then we could. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Provost. It's a broad question, I'm afraid, and I'm just wondering how we can, having just taken part in some of the carbon literacy training that has been on offer, how we ascertain or capture any improvements in terms of our net zero targets in relation to where our money is sitting, and any benchmarking and any improvements that we might seek to expect around our investment. Thanks.
Again, through you, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Bell. I suppose the short answer is we don't directly. The policy and the guidance is such that we, the priorities are set out in the Treasury strategy around security, liquidity, and yield in that order. And that's to say we can't take into account other aspects, but that hierarchy of where the returns are made and how we invest is in line with the guidance. There is a brief mention within the report around ethical investing, which kind of carbon's not exactly that, but I suppose it's along similar lines in terms of that broader policy objective that the organisation may have, but the rules that we don't allow us to take that into account directly as things stand.
Could I come back, please, Provost?
Yes.
So is there or should there be a conversation happening nationally around how we do that collectively then?
I think that would be a reasonable question and ask. Now, we engage regularly with our Treasury advisors and industry bodies through that. It is something that is, I would say, on the radar nationally, but there isn't I guess, an absolute solution to that as things stand at the moment. But we definitely have it on our radar because it is well, climate emergencies, etc., have been declared, so it has to feature somewhere in terms of the activity that we undertake.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Lorimer. Final chance for questions. Comments then? No comments? Right. Okay. With that in mind, the recommendations is to one, approve, and two, sorry, they're both to approve. Is that agreed? Moving on to number 7, which is Town and County Planning Scotland Act 1997, review and amendment of the Council Section 43 scheme of delegation to officers. And Jill Patterson is to introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. This report seeks approval for minor revisions to the Council statutory scheme of delegation under Section 43A of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act. Those are applications that are delegated to the Chief Planning Officer and therefore do not come in front of Development Standards Committee. The scheme of delegation is submitted to Scottish ministers and requires to be reviewed every 5 years. A short life member officer working group was collated to discuss the current scheme of delegation, and a minor change is to that scheme of delegation. Generally positive feedback from the Scottish Government about how we have a really good balance between those applications that are delegated in front of Development Standards Committee. So the report in front of you asks for agreement to that revision and agreement to then forward on to Scottish Ministers. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Nobody remotely. Comments? Councillor Cheap, saw your hand first. No one remotely. Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. As convener of Development Standards, I'd like to give my support to this report. We had an active short life member officer group on this, and there was a number of questions raised and some concerns, as I made clear in the discussion in paragraph 5. I think clause 5.3 to 5.5 summarise it very, very nicely, and the items on the report had unanimous support of the MOG. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheap. Any further comments? Right, the recommendations are: 1, approve the proposed revision to the section 43A planning scheme of delegation as set out in Appendix 1, and 2, instruct the service leader planning and sustainable growth to submit the scheme of delegation to Scottish Ministers' approval. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to the last one on the agenda today, timetable of council meetings for the period August 24 to June 25. I think Alison Watson will introduce this report.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, a very short introduction. So the report sets out a proposed timetable of meetings for the period August 2024 to June 2025. You'll see in recommendation 2 that we are going to look at the pattern and frequency of council meetings, taking on board comments that we've already had, but we are seeking approval of the timetable just now, and if any revisions are required, then a further report would be brought back to members. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? No. Comments? Oh, Councillor Cheap, Bell, Meekin, and probably that was beforehand, so I'll put, if that's okay with you, Councillor Meekin. It's hard to be looking at for Doran, then Meekin. Right. I think we will start with Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thanks again, Provost. Mine is a very quick comment. Happy not to bother with an amendment to this, but I just giving notice of a concern for the proposed Development Standards Committee meeting on the 13th of August. We will we'll have discussions with our planning colleagues, etc., on all of this, because I would like to, in due course, amend the date of that. It's just to give notice to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Bell.
Yes, I've just this morning again asked NHS Tayside to have some consideration for diary clashes, because it means that both Councillor Cheap and myself end up having to miss some events that clash with Council, and I feel that leaves the Health Board with a democratic deficit. I've attempted this before. It's just to make you aware, in case there's contact made, that that's where it came from. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bell. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. Yeah, I also end up with clashes within development standards within my role on TACTRAN as well. But as these meetings are set ahead of the others, then it's I think it's unavoidable, as we sit on so many different bodies and the council on external committees as well. My comment was as well a consideration in the future around whether or not we do some full council meetings at times when more members of the public might be able to attend. I know that this has been discussed previously, but I wanted to raise it again as just a consideration for the future, just to encourage that engagement from the public in these meetings. Thanks.
Councillor Meakin.
Mine has been answered. Thank you.
Oh, apologies for putting you further down the list there. Thanks, Councillor Meakin. Well, any chance, anyone else want to ask any further comments? Well, with that in mind, one, approves the timetable of meetings covering the period August 2024 to June 2025, attached as Appendix 1 to the report. And very importantly, number 2, notes that a review of the pattern of frequency of council meetings will be undertaken, and if adjustments are proposed, a further report will be brought back to future meeting. Thank you very much. Is that agreed? Thank you very much.
Can we the live stream, please?